Hallo, hallo. Hallo, hallo, hoor je mij nu goed? Welcome everybody at our 28th Ode aan de Code, this time again in Apeldoorn, our second of the year 2022. We have already planned our third on the 16th of June, but later on more about that meetup. First of all, I would like to give you a warm welcome and applause for Leon Rodeburg. He's going to explain to us what you can do with AWS Amplify and how you can scale it and what you should not do. So take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Steven. So I'm really glad to be here, finally in person again. I presented at Ode aan de Code 2 years ago. I think it was around 2 years ago. It was virtual. So I watched a whole list of people or like icons if the camera was off and presented to them. And there was some interactivity, but not a lot. So today I would like to change that and make it interactive. So if during the session you have any questions, just raise your hand and we can discuss. Also, maybe I'll do some scanning of the room because I want to know who's here and what the knowledge level is. So I'm going to test that. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Leon Rodenburg, and I'm a software development consultant at Xebia. We're based in Hilversum, and we also have an office in Amsterdam. And we have Xebia Nederland. It's a Dutch company of origin, but now we're expanding. We're also in India and in the US, Dubai, Singapore, so it's getting pretty global. And as a software development consultant, my role is to help clients with their projects, and that can be in any sense. So it might be working with a team, implementing something that's on the backlog, or, I don't know, talking to the CTO and explaining to him that the plans he's making are not the right plans. So it's on different levels, and that depends. And to me, that's really fun, because then I get to see a lot of different types of projects and lots of different tech stacks, and also different organizations, because every company is different. And yeah, you do see some interesting organizations out there. I'm a certified solutions architect, so I work with AWS most of the time when I do things in the cloud. But not only AWS, I also work with Alibaba Cloud, which is a cloud provider from China. Most people have not used it, and I don't think that will really happen anytime soon. But to me, it's interesting because I have a background in Chinese linguistics. So I studied Chinese, and also I like computer science, so it's sort of a dual degree. And this was the way for me to combine the two and do stuff with China and do stuff with software development. So that's the reason why. And if you have questions about beer, then please interrupt me immediately, because I'm really passionate about beer. I brew beer both at home, but also in a professional brewery. And in February, I got certified as an international beer sommelier. So we actually have 300 of those in the Netherlands, and nobody knows, but everyone knows wine sommeliers, but you also have beer sommeliers. And apparently there's also now tea sommeliers and coffee sommeliers. So I don't know like what that is, but for beer, I know what it is. So if you're interested in beer, or if you know any good beers to recommend, then please let me know. I'll be really happy to hear. Okay. This one.
Yeah.
It should be there, I guess. Yeah. And if we do it like this, do you see anything? I'll reshare my screen, maybe that helps. No changes? Okay, so it works. Phew, I was getting a bit flustered. Okay, if you have questions afterwards, you can send me an email or find me on GitHub, then we can always have a chat. So let's get started. Today we're going to talk about AWS Amplify, but first I want to know who's ever used Amplify. And it can be anything, like getting started guide to super pro level. So getting started guide, super pro level, one. Okay, let's see. Now, but AWS Amplify is a collection of AWS services that they sort of market as one thing, but it's a collection of serverless services that will help you build your application in an efficient way. The most important services are CloudFront, so for distributing your front end, S3 for storing your front end, AppSync, which is sort of a backend as a service. You get a GraphQL endpoint and you can talk to it. DynamoDB for storage. It has its quirks. We might get to that. And Cognito, so that's the user pools that you can use to actually have people sign into your application or sign up, and then you can store their details there. So that's Amplify in a nutshell. You can build web and mobile applications with it, and yeah, the idea is that you can do it fast. If you look at it closely, you start it up, you install CLI, you do an init project, and then you'll see that in the end, it's just a wrapper around CloudFormation. So if you're familiar with CloudFormation, then hopefully today everything also will kind of make sense. So what it does, it templates out some kind of CloudFormation that in the end will make up your stack, so you don't have to type all the hundreds or thousands of lines of CloudFormation yourself. And then you can deploy it as a stack, and it's all managed by Amplify. So if you look at the website if you look at the AWS website, this is what they say. So AWS Amplify, easily create a backend, connect your app, manage users and content, and then build a web front-end UI. Sounds easy. So you go there and you start up AWS Amplify. This is what you see. Quick start. Build and then you have a drop-down with several options, and one of them is to-do list. And then you can choose a front-end framework, and I chose React. And then you click Get Started. And then you go through the Getting Started tutorial, and you see these kinds of things. So you see on the left an AppSync model, a to-do, because we selected a to-do app. So then you're storing to-dos. And then I chose React, so you're going to see an example of this that says, okay, this is now how you can query your to-dos. And then you type Amplify push, and it starts running like it's complete magic. You have no clue what it is, but apparently the data gets fetched, and yeah, there's no real way of knowing how this works on the root, so you need to dig a bit. So you've installed the CLI, you've configured everything, and it's all the time you type something, Amplify push. You type something, Amplify push. Type something, Amplify push. And then, yeah, your app gets built up in the cloud. And you also have a nice UI. So you see here that this is a pipeline for like a demo app that I did. And then you can see that whenever you do Amplify push, it will start pushing stuff. Or if you commit to your GitHub repository that you've connected to this app, it will pick that up and start rolling out your pipeline. And it works. So it all seems really easy, and I think that's what they're aiming for. And then before you know it, you end up with something like this. So this is a basic Amplify application, but then decomposed. You can see the AppSync. So AppSync is the backend as a service, GraphQL. It stores stuff in DynamoDB. We have our CloudFront distribution with an S3 bucket where our front-end application is served from. And you can add Cognito for doing authentication. So before you know it, you have this, which is okay. But yeah, what then happens if people ask you to build something like this? So I'm going to talk about a project we did and we're still running for the Postcode Lottery, Postcode Loterij. So if you're familiar with it, it's you send in your postal code as your lottery ticket, and if you win, the whole street wins because it's the postal code. And they asked us like, yeah, can you build something for us? We want to build a games platform, so we want to add games on top of the lottery, and especially on top of TV programs that we're sending out, that we're like showing or airing on TV. Yeah, and we're curious about Amplify. So then you build that. This is the landing page, and then you're going to integrate a game. So this is the game. I don't know who've watched Deal or No Deal, but it's a TV program. You select the box, and then you have to select other boxes, and based on which prizes are in the boxes, the bank will give you an offer for your box because you don't know what's in it. But they will say, okay, we think your box is worth 5,000 euros, and then you either accept the offer or you decline, and then you have to select more of these boxes. Then, of course, if you have the 200,000 in your box, then you should play all the way to the end, but you don't know what's in your box. So that's the whole point. Yeah, this game you can play online. Oh yeah, and we also need sort of also an environment where people can see their lottery tickets. You need to see which prizes they won. You should be able to connect your Postcode Lottery account, or if you're already a player for the Postcode Lottery, you can play for free every day. So we want them to connect that. And yeah, the TV show is going to air in 3 months, and we're also really interested about AWS Amplify. So can you build this in 3 months? We were like, not really sure. Like, we just went through the Getting Started guide. It all seems easy. So yeah, why not just try? Like 3 months, big deadline, TV show. Buddy Vedder is the guy who was presenting the show. And they said, yeah, Buddy is going to announce dealornodeal.nl on the TV program. Yeah, it needs to be done by then. He said, yeah, we haven't really used Amplify for anything other than making a to-do app and selecting React. How are we going to do this? So today I want to show you not step by step how we did it, but I want to show you the things that we've learned during that time. So if you take Amplify, the example app, and you want to do it for any bigger application, then this is the way to go. Because what I've just showed you, like this is the UI for people that are actually playing. But we also have a UI for doing the actual lottery draw. So on the back office side, there needs to be an engine that will be able to like give a list of all the lottery tickets. It needs to be exported and imported by the Postcode Lottery for them to actually do the draw. And they have an engine for that. It's an isolated machine. It's disconnected from the internet, and only the notary is allowed to touch that machine. And they check all kinds of checksums, and everything needs to match, because if there's any discrepancies, then the lottery draw is invalid, and then nobody will win prizes. So everything needs to be solid. So it's more than just a few pages. So the first thing we did is use lambda resolvers. So if you're ever going to build an AppSync app or Amplify application, you need to make it bigger than just storing to-dos. This is the first thing that you're going to do. So the first thing is look at this, and you're going to use it. So what is it? If we have the drawing of the basic architecture of an Amplify application, it's really fun that AppSync can take your data through GraphQL. You get that for free, and it will store it in DynamoDB for free. But what if you need to know if you actually want to store it? What if you need some extra logic? How do you do that? And that's where these resolvers come in. So you can actually have AppSync not only store data directly, but you can set certain fields on each model. So a model is a DynamoDB table. The fields get mapped, and that's all magic. But what if you need to actually add some logic to that, and you want to make sure that a certain field, if that's queried, that you actually can add some logic to it. So one of the things we had to do was, one of the requirements for getting a betting or a lottery license is that you implement something called responsible gaming, which means that people online have a limit on how much they can spend. Because you're not only playing for free, or you're playing for €1 each time, and you can win something. It's a game of chance. So you need to limit people in how much they can spend. But we needed to know on the front end, has this person, this player already exceeded their limit or not? That's not really something that you can get for free. So you need logic. Another one is the balance. So how much credits do you have? It seems relatively easy, but if you're also a lottery, like a postcode lottery player, then you get extra credits every day, but have you already used them or not? So it's pretty complex. So in this way, you can actually add some logic, and you can see it on the right. So this is one of the lambdas that we wrote, and you can connect this using Amplify. And there you can see, I'm not showing the actual code, but you can see that we have resolvers that actually map the type and the field to some calculation. So any logic that you want, you can actually use this to query for data, but you can also do it for mutations. So everything you have in your GraphQL schema that's defined by AppSync, you can sort of override. So you can say, okay, whenever we need to do something with this field, please call this lambda. And then the rest is managed. You don't need to do anything. And that's especially handy because we needed to scale to, I think, 150,000 users in 5 minutes. And that's not too easy if you don't have any serverless, but this was completely serverless. So we were sleeping, like we could just not watch the metrics and know that it would be fine because it's all serverless. So yeah, this was the first thing that we did, and this was actually a pretty big improvement. And yeah, we started doing this all over the place. So how does it then look if you actually have the function resolver? So you have a schema that's actually taken by AppSync and deployed into your actual model, and then you can query it. And this is the way you would query the fields that I just showed. You would just say, okay, I want to get a player with the ID, the balance, and limit exceeded. But what actually happens here is that under the hood, it will spawn 2 lambdas concurrently, and it will run the code that we just saw, and it will fetch the results and then put them together and then return them in the query. So you can make this as crazy as you want, but the lambda invocation and everything is all managed by Amplify. So that's really, really handy. Any questions about the lambda? Fast. Define fast. No, it's a lambda invocation, and actually, I don't know if you know, but the first time you call a lambda, it will be cold, which means it needs to start up. So you will have the cold start, but once it's warm, it will be really fast. And especially if you combine all that logic into a single lambda, that's smart, because then you only have one cold start for the first user ever on the platform. And then the other 149,999, they will actually have a hot lambda. Second tip, use custom categories. So whenever you go to Amplify, you see a nice list, there's good documentation. They show we have these categories of services. You can do tracing, you can do X-ray, you can do notifications, you can do PubSub. One thing that you cannot do, though, is queuing. Like, okay, but we're actually going to need that because we also need to process payments. And to process payments sort of in a way that if it goes down, not everything is not going to break, you need to have a queue. So you can put it on the queue, and then you take a message from the queue, process that payment, but if it fails, then you can just try again. So in the end, you process all the payments and no people actually pay withohad getting the credits. But there's no support in Amplify. So custom categories is the way to solve that. So what we did, we have Adyen as a payment provider. So Adyen sends notifications whenever someone pays. Like all payment providers do that. I think Molly, it works the same. You just provide an endpoint, and then whenever someone pays through Ideal or whatever they use, you're going to get called on that endpoint. It will send you a notification saying, okay, this user paid this amount and it was successful. So then you know that you can actually give out the credits that people want. What we want to do is to do it this way. So we have an API gateway with a lambda behind that. API gateway is also supported by Amplify. So you can also add, instead of GraphQL endpoints, REST endpoints. Adyen doesn't talk GraphQL, so we needed REST here. And then there's a payments lambda that will handle everything relating to payments and integrating with Adyen. But we wanted to have a queue in between. So using SQS, you can just put the notification on the queue and then have a different lambda that will be triggered as soon as one message is on this queue or more messages. And will just be triggered as many times as there are messages on the queue. Then if during the processing of the message, the internet breaks down or something goes wrong, it will actually be retried. So it will stay on the queue, and then the next time you can try again and try again and try again. So it's a pretty robust way but just not supported. So apparently there's a trick that you can do, and it's called custom categories. So if you have an Amplify app and you did Amplify init, then this is sort of the layout that you're going to get in your repository. There's an Amplify directory, and there's some configuration in there, and one of the files is called backend.config.json. And the file seems really magic. Like it gets generated. You don't really have a clue what's in there, but apparently you can just add stuff. So you can just add stuff like I'm now going to implement something called SQS, and you can just choose anything actually. And apparently you can just say, okay, I have CloudFormation that I want to inject into this Amplify application. And you're going to parameters from Amplify, and the rest is really up to you. So you can do whatever you want. So what you then do is in the backend config, define this. And in this directory naming is also magic, so it needs to match whatever's in the backend config. And then you put something here, a CloudFormation template, and all of a sudden it will be picked up by Amplify, and then it will be deployed. So this is how we deployed our payments queue. And one of the things you can do is actually add a dead letter queue. I haven't shown it here, but there's a dead letter queue, which means that if SQS cannot process your message after, I don't know, 10 times, so we set max receive count 10, it will go to the dead letter queue, and someone will be called out of bed like, hey, we have a message in the dead letter queue. There's really something wrong. We cannot process it. We've tried 10 times, but maybe you should look at it. So that's also something you can do, because as long as you have the power of CloudFormation, then yeah, you can just come up with anything you want. Any questions about the previous one? No? Okay, then we're going to go to number 3, and that's use TypeScript. Who has used TypeScript? Majority of the people, I think around 80%. What's the benefit of TypeScript? Type. Yeah, so that's the thing. With TypeScript, you can type everything, and if you look at there's somewhere in the documentation of Amplify a really hidden page that says and explains how you can actually integrate TypeScript into your Amplify application, also in your Lambdas, so in the sort of more the backend side of your app. The documentation isn't really correct, so there are a few lines to explain how to do it, but if you do it like that, then you're gonna in the end be screwed like we were. But still, TypeScript is a good thing to actually use. And we use it for everything. So we use it for the lambdas that we wrote. We used it for our front-end code. And you can actually also use code generation with TypeScript because it's typed, so it's easy also to infer types based on something else. And that something else can, for example, be a GraphQL schema. So there's a library called GraphQL CodeGen, and I would really recommend it, especially if you're doing it at this scale. So we had a TypeScript schema that was, I think, 900 lines long. Or a GraphQL schema that was 900 lines long, and you don't want to re-implement all these types all the time. You don't want to do it by hand. Like whenever the schema changes, you want to update the types and done. And that's what the GraphQL CodeGen actually does. So if this is an example schema, and if you then run GraphQL CodeGen on it, you can see that it generates all kinds of complex types, maybes and exacts, and all kinds of sort of utility types that it uses throughout the rest of the code. But you can also see that it, for example, exports a type called query, and that is the root level query that's here, or a type chat message, and it has certain fields. And this is actually code that you can use. So you could just generate this in one place and then use it all over. And then you know for sure that the front end and the back end are actually talking the same types, and that fields that are maybe not defined anymore, that you can narrow compilation time and actually know that you're doing something wrong. So that's pretty useful. So this is more for the general types, but you could also do it for this. So let's say you write a query, maybe with a fragment, but you want to query something in your React app, so you want to get something from AppSync. GraphQL CodeGen will generate hooks for you. So you can just use a React hook to say, okay, now run this query, and then it's done. It's the only thing you need to provide. So this is also really useful. And if you ever need the source of your query, you can just refer to this. Then if the source of the query changes a bit, then the name won't change. So at least you don't need to update everywhere you're running a GraphQL query. And then if you have a hook, yeah, you can just do this. So you say, okay, I import it from our generated code, and then you can run it. You can just call it as if it's a function, and underwater it will actually call AppSync, and it will call the GraphQL API, fetch the data, and you can present it on the front end. NX. Who's used NX? A little bit. Read about it. Did you do the getting started guide? Not even the getting started guide. Okay. Yeah, NX. There are all kinds of like tools that people use for repository, like monorepo management. So we started to expand our application, and we expanded it into multiple Amplify applications. And we did want to share some code between all these applications. So you could wire that all yourself using NPM and then all kinds of build tooling, but you can also use a monorepo tool to do that. And NX is one of them. And it's, I think, one of the sort of more opinionated ones, but also it is flexible when you need it. So I think the level of abstraction is pretty good for NX. And they say it's a smart, fast, and extensible build system. So you're like, okay, yeah, this sounds like what we need. We have 2 weeks to do this because then the deadline comes and we need to be finished. So let's take this. And in the end, we were actually really pleased with it. So it's a pretty good tool to build up a monorepo. So how does it look like? In the end, Nova Media is the parent company of the Postcode Lottery, so the company behind it. But we had like these many Amplify apps. End-to-end tests are actually not Amplify apps, but the other ones are separate Amplify apps that we all manage from the same repository, but they get deployed to different places. And we could also create libraries that was shared code, so maybe data access, all the ways to query data, all the GraphQL queries that you need to write, or mocks for mocking stuff from the backend if you need to run the tests on the front end, and all kinds of utilities. And this is actually possible with to manage with NX. So what you get with NX is another magic configuration file. You can imagine that most of the code in this repo was actually JSON configuration, but it looks like this, and you specify all types of projects that you have. So you say, okay, we have a project called Admin UI. So that was our UI where people would actually log into to get the lottery tickets and start a draw and fill in prizes and then stuff like that. And we had some lambdas, and there was more. But this is the file that sort of glues everything together. So by this file, NX knows exactly which directories it needs to look at and what types of things it can do. And for some, you can just specify directly here what the targets are. So those are like the NPM scripts that you have in your package JSON. But you can also forward it to the actual directory where the application lives, and then have a configuration file there that specifies all these targets. So once you have that, you can start doing all kinds of interesting things, because you can just, you saw the top directory was called Nova Media, but it could be anything, could be your company name. And then you can start importing things from that namespace or that package, but it's not an actual package that you really manage or publish, or it's not an NPM package. You will just get it and it will be wired. And in the end, whenever you compile that, it will still cherry pick the code from whatever you've imported and make that your actual application code. So there's all kinds of things. As soon as you can start sharing logic, sharing data access, there's actually a lot you can do. So we started extracting all kinds of logic, especially Lambda logic, because Amplify doesn't have a real useful way to share code between Lambdas, but of course you want to share code. So we can do that with NX, and it was used a lot. But also the GraphQL things. You just use the GraphQL code gen of the past tip, and you just run it once and make sure that every target depends on it. So every app that you will compile will actually make sure that it will first compile the GraphQL schema. It will put it in a central place, and any application that you build will actually use the same code, the same definitions, and the same interface. And I think that was pretty strong. There was one problem though, because Amplify, opinionated as it is, it wants to have all the Lambda code in the function directory of the Amplify directory that's in the root of your repository. And that's not where NX wants to have code, because you cannot make this into an NX workspace. So we had to glue these two together. And we figured out that you could do that. I'll get to that in a bit. But once you have that, once you've glued everything together, you can start doing stuff with NX that's pretty useful and also pretty hard to implement in different tools. One is, for example, to run builds in parallel. So whenever you want to build 2 applications, you just run them in parallel. It will be a lot faster. And everything will be cached by NX as well. So if you run it again and nothing's changed, it will just spit out the same artifacts. Or you could call a target on all lambdas to make sure that we Amplify install it, as we call it. So let's put it in the place where Amplify thinks it should be. And another cool thing with NX is that you, for example, can say, I only want to run the tests for projects that have file changes in this Git repo. So you can make changes in like somewhere within that tree, and then NX will figure out that it is under a certain project, and will only run the tests for that project and any of its dependencies. So it's pretty smart about the sort of the imports and the graph, and then we'll figure out, okay, you only want to test the affected files. I will look at your Git changes, your stash, like, or your staged changes for committing. I will make sure that it only runs those. So that's a useful one to put in front of your Git. So it's a pre-commit hook. And to get back to the previous thing about the Amplify install with NX, you could actually say, I want to have a custom target that does some things. And this was our way to actually integrate Amplify in NX and make sure, just by some basic shell commands, that the output files of the Amplify or of the Lambda build, so the TypeScript build, would actually be put in a place where Lambda would expect them. So things would not break. And this is all stuff that you can do with NX, and we use it heavily. So we use a lot of these tricks to tie and glue things together and make sure that everything works. So before I'm going to show you the actual result, these are the things that I wanted to share. So if you're going to do Amplify at scale, then only the getting started guide is not going to be enough. You're going to need more than that. So you're going to need some tips and tricks and tools. And I've shared 4 of them. And I have a 5th tip, and that is actually to understand what is behind Amplify. Because if you're unfamiliar with DynamoDB and how it works and how it stores data, then you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. Because you will soon start doing queries that will be only in a single DynamoDB partition, which will get hot, and then it will be rate limited by AWS. So you need to think about those kinds of things. They are not solved by Amplify, unfortunately. So before or during the building of your app, make sure that you also read the documentation of CloudFront, S3, or DynamoDB, and make sure that you understand that. So that is the last tip. Are there any questions at this point? No questions? Do you want to see a demo? Yeah? Okay. So this is our website. You can actually play. So I don't know if there's any postcode lottery players in the room. But you can play this. And the newest game is called 1 tegen 50. So it's 1 to 50. And it's a game of you ask questions and then you play against other people. And this whole thing was built in Amplify. And I can prove that. So we can, for example, see that if I run any, if I reload this page, there's going to be some GraphQL queries done. This is a pre-flight, and this is the actual payload that we're sending. So this is a query we run, get current play round for game. This is actually what powers the countdown here. So we need to know like how long is this round still going to run. And this is sourced through a Lambda in the end to DynamoDB and then all the way back. And you can send in a certain game ID because there are multiple games and the play rounds are different. So we need to know which one it is. And then you get a response. And the response from AppSync goes like this. So you can see that we have a start date, an end date. There's a golden threshold. That's sort of a neat thing that they came up with, is that if you play a game, you need to sort of have a goal. Like if there's no goal, then it's not really fun to play the game. So what they did is they came up with a threshold. And for the TV shows, it's actually the amount of points that someone gets in the TV show. So you're playing against the person in the TV show. And then if you go above that threshold, then you get a golden ticket. So it's a lottery ticket that has some extra prizes attached to it. But yeah, if you know how it works, then you can actually just look at the threshold, and as soon as you get a bid from the bank that's higher than the threshold, then you just accept, because then you're already in a golden ticket. Okay, well, let's log in. This is the UI that I showed before. It's the sort of the logged in version. I don't play the actual postcode lottery, so I didn't connect my account. I don't get any free plays, which means I need to get some credits. So I'm actually going to buy a few credits. I'm going to pick up my phone. Let's add some credits. So how often do we want to play? Maybe 5 times. It's going to be €5. If someone else wants to scan the code, you're free to do so. While I pick up my phone. No, nobody yet? Damn. Okay. Let's scan the code. Someone scanned the code. Who was this? Thanks. Okay, so now I get 5 credits from an anonymous giver. Cool. So we can finally play. So let's first play Deal or No Deal. And this is where this is the point where we actually check the limit. So I think if you look at the GraphQL queries that are done, you can see there are quite a few. And I need to find the right one. So this is the get player. You can see there's some information in there. You also see I don't have a subscription count, which is the amount of plays you get for free. Unfortunately, I don't get any. And this is some info about the game. And here's the limit exceeded query. So I luckily have not exceeded my limit yet. And I have a balance of 5. So I have five like credits to actually play. So let's play. The games are not built by us. The games are built by a third party, and they provide the environment, and they connect to us over an API that we expose. And then they will call certain like endpoints on certain events. So when someone like starts the game, we'll get an HTTP request, or when they finish the game and get a score, we get an HTTP request with the score, so we can check if it's higher or lower than the threshold. Let's not do sound, and then I can play. So what's our lucky number? 12. Great. And then I'm going to do this the developer way, which is so now I get a deal. They want to offer me 1,780 euros for my box. I'm going to continue. No deal. Again, they're going to call. Once getting better, no deal. Continue our. How many times have you done this? A lot. Yeah. Yeah, at some point I built a simulator actually. It was taking so much time that I just built my own simulator that would call the HTTP endpoints on the right thing, and I could just say, I now scored 50,000, and then I could check if it actually worked. So on our dev environment, we use, we use the simulator a lot. I should have taken the deal. It's not, yeah? Okay, deal. So I now undersold my box for only 5,000 euros while I had 20 in it. I needed to score above 400 euros, so it was going to be easy anyway. So now I'm in the lottery draw, and we should be able to see that. If I go to mijn uitslagen, you can see that there's 2 rounds. I played already this. When did I play? 19:05 today. This was earlier, my last credit of the previous batch. But we can see our score, and it was higher than the daily amount, so the daily threshold. And the T says that the draw will be done. So I think draws are done on Friday. And that's also a funny thing, is that in the Netherlands, if you have a license to do lottery draws, there's a limit to the amount of draws you can actually do. So they were planning on doing a draw every day. but they would exceed their license, so that wasn't allowed. I don't know exactly how many you can do, but this was the solution. So just batch everything up of every game, put them all in a big lottery draw, and then hopefully you win. Other game? Kofferjacht? I think Kofferjacht is the same, so it's boring. 1 tegen 50. Let's see. I haven't played this one, so I'm curious. What are we gonna do? Like, we have to choose a category: sports, or art and culture. Sports? Yeah, okay. Kiksen. Wat zijn kiksen? I think it's football shoes, right? Yes. Well, 5 people were not sports fans, I guess. History or geography? History. Waarmee werden overwinnaars in de klassieke oudheid getooid? So what did people that win in the classical era, what would they get on top of their head? I think it's lauwerkrans, right? Yeah, we can play, and then at some point I'll make a mistake, I guess. Yeah. Oh no, now I've lost. I would have eliminated 4 other players, but unfortunately no. And then you also get a score. So, and the score is also above the threshold or not, and then depending on that, you get entered into the golden draw or to only in the regular draw. Okay, so that was it. I'm a bit under time, so if there's anything to discuss or if you have any other questions, then let me know. Anything you want to see, anything you want to do? Yeah? What's the best beer? For which time? What are you eating? Okay, so yeah, I'll repeat. The question is, what is the best beer? So it's not related, but interesting question. And then it's for like around the borrel. So no food yet, but you're at home or at work? At work. Okay. So then, have you had a busy day or was it a slow day? Busy day. Well, then I would say you could just grab Heineken. Yeah. No, it's just yeah. It really depends on your taste. But I would grab an IPA, probably a New England IPA. So that's the super hazy ones that are really tropical with all kinds of pineapple flavors or lychee or like all kinds of those flavors. And they have some bitterness, but not too much. And because it's sort of so smooth, it's really good for if you're out in the sun. It's not so heavy that you cannot drink afterwards. So if you take a 12% beer at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, then the rest of the evening you cannot really taste any other stuff because you'll be completely out of your taste. What's your favorite beer? 100 Volt from 100 Watt, the brewery. No, but 100 Watt is the brewery, and I think 100. Oh, yeah, that's a New England IPA, I think. Yeah, so that's a good choice. Any other questions, Sven?
Yeah. So you built this in 3 months.
Yeah.
And with how many people did you build this, and what kind of roles did those people have?
Yeah. So we only built the Deal or No Deal game in 3 months. That was a TV show with a deadline. The rest came later. And we were with a team of 6 developers, a product owner, some people from marketing, and that was about it. And then you had the rest of the organization, but it all went like through the product owner because we had to integrate with their systems, for example, for logging in and making sure that we could connect to people that actually are part of the postcode lottery. So it was a relatively small team. But yeah, I think everyone was sort of, we had some division of front end, back end, but most of us were full stack kind of developers. So
It's
they
quite
knew
a
everything worked.
complex application for 6 people in 3 months.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and actually, the most of the complexity I cannot really show because it's the back office UI that is used by the notary and for the draw engine. But that's where most of the time went in. I think if you have a design and you have a third party that delivers a game to you, it's relatively easy to implement the design, connect the game, and then make something work. But you need to make sure that it's secure. And another problem that we had is DynamoDB and most of the services that are used by Amplify, they're eventually consistent. But if you explain eventual consistency to a notary, they will be really surprised because they want every number to be correct. And you cannot tell them, okay, but maybe it's going to be correct in 10 minutes. It's not going to be correct now yet. So we had a lot of discussions with them about that. That certain things will go wrong. If you have 150,000 people playing a game, yeah, it just might be that some scores will get lost, or it might just happen that some processing will be slower than expected. But you cannot solve that problem. You just need to cope with it, and that's what we tried, and also tried to explain to them like this is the way it works. But there was quite some struggle to try to add some transactional logic to things that were happening in the platform. But yeah, if you're in a small team, it is doable to build this on Amplify. So I can actually recommend it, especially if you're planning on using serverless anyway. I think it's a good fit. But yeah, the question is how long this is going to be scalable code-wise. Because if you're going to build more and more, if you're going to have 40 Amplify apps at some point, yeah, it just doesn't really make sense anymore to do that in a single repository.
Cool. And could you tell something about the testing strategy and how this is different around serverless applications in comparison with other applications?
I'm not sure if it's really different. So I think it's comparable to what you would do normally. So what we did is within the pipeline, we run all the sort of unit tests. So those are tests that we run on the function level or maybe on input-output level of a Lambda. We had an integration environment where we also run end-to-end tests using Cypress. So it will go through and click through the game and then make sure that everything still works. And then we also had regular penetration testing and load testing, but that was obligatory because it's a lottery, so they need to do that. So we saw random spikes suddenly, like, well, was there a TV show? But no, it were the load testing guys that were actually load testing the app. But we didn't hit any limits, and they could just keep on going. And at some point, I think someone said, yeah, it's going to be too expensive to do this on acceptance because AWS will scale. And the only thing that's limiting it that is sort of your credit card. So they found it too expensive and stopped that. And penetration testing was also really fun because there were 0 findings. So there was, was nothing. And it was also within the 3 months. So sort of adhering to the standards and trying to use the tools that you get. And yeah, you do get a sort of a safe standard for your app.
Cool. So the load testing was really just a formality. So
yeah, because you're using all kinds of tools and you don't know how much you're going to scale. You can see the AWS quotas in your dashboard, and you see you can do 1,000 concurrent Lambda invocations, but how many users are that? So if you need to translate that to the amount of users, then it's often pretty hard. So we were a bit hesitant at first, like, okay, how much people are you going to play in parallel, and is it going to work? But it worked out, so that's good. You do need to be careful with DynamoDB because if you make a mistake there and query in the wrong way, then you will be limiting yourself. So you need to, sort of know what you're doing and using, and it's. I think that's part of it. You just need to understand what's behind it to actually be able to use it effectively. If you sort of follow the standards and then try to find your way around the other things that are limiting, then it has pretty big potential, especially for spiky loads like this, where there's someone on a TV show that announces that they have a new game or a new website. Then you can see like suddenly 100,000 people that start using it. If you would do that on a traditional machine, then it would just break. And even if you do it with, I don't know, a container environment or a cluster, it will also struggle to keep up with that load and sort of scale horizontally because it takes time to spin up these machines. But for Lambda, it's just really easy.
Cool. Thanks for sharing this case.
How scalable is it? Is it a lot of companies paying for it? You can do for other companies or other clients, or
So the question is, how scalable is it? And then do you mean scalable in?
yeah, because
like,
it's you already said it's lots of manual labor to do it for the postcode lottery. So if you have another customer who wants the same thing or something different, can you do a lot of copy and pasting or?
the setup, I think we could reuse. So the mono repo and also the tooling that we have around compiling the lambdas and putting them in the right place for Amplify to pick them up. I think that's what stuff we can reuse. We can reuse the custom categories that we made for SQS and some others. But the logic of the game and the front ends, we don't build game platforms every day. So I think those are the pieces that you sort of try to put abstract away, so you keep the stuff that you can reuse. So I think the setup is actually something we could reuse. But the implementation behind it, the logic, we don't have any other customers at the moment that actually are interested in building something like that.
Okay.
So it was, to us, it was also a really interesting project because, it's just not something that gets asked daily, like build this and do it in 3 months. So that was really, it was really cool. And I'm glad that we said that we could make it and also delivered on that promise, because if you promise and then don't deliver, it's also a bit sad. But luckily we made it.
So you kind of already touched on this, but you made it clear that. Oh, sorry, is het Nederlands beter misschien? Ik zit gehouden aan het Engels.
It's fine, fine by me.
Okay,
Both fine.
okay.
Mag allebei.
Okay, we'll do in English then. So the customer really wanted you to build it in AWS Amplify.
Yes.
But what was the main reason?
The main reason for them to be interested in Amplify is because they read about it, and it says that they could build applications fast. So that was literally the reason they wanted us to investigate it and get some experience with it. But you can imagine that the lottery has a lot of one-off marketing websites, like one-off marketing actions, campaigns that they send out, and they need a website for it that might have some logic. So they were really interested in using Amplify for that. So that's why they asked us to look into Amplify and start using it for this project and get some experience with it. So I think the rapid development that Amplify promises is the main reason that they were sort of interested in it.
Then, like, I have another question. Like, is it possible to be more flexible with the database engine, or do you have to use DynamoDB?
Theoretically, you could map using a Lambda or using AppSync resolvers. I don't know if you've seen those, but I wouldn't recommend writing them. It's in Velocity, which is a template language that you can use to map inputs to outputs. It's horrible. So I think if you could do it with Lambdas, it might be possible. So you just map certain queries to a Lambda function, and then from there you can do anything. So if you attach that Lambda function to your VPC, you could also connect to an RDS instance and then query data there. We've actually considered doing it because we were so in discussion with the notary about the eventual consistency that we were actually considering taking a transactional database that would be able to ensure like transactionality across things that we needed to do. But in the end, it's going to kill the scalability, and the spikiness will not be able, or will not be easy to overcome. So in the end, we didn't do it, but you can do it as soon as you're in sort of in Lambda land, then you can make that, talk to anything. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions? So there was a question from a colleague who's watching back home. He asked me to ask you what kind of front-end frameworks are supported by Lambda.
Lambda doesn't, I think he means Amplify.
Amplify, sorry.
Yeah. Everything, actually. So Amplify doesn't impose any restrictions on the front-end framework that you use. They do have a library that will make it easier to query some of the data, but we kicked that out because we didn't like the way it worked. Plus, we used GraphQL CodeGen, which was better. But if you want to restrain yourself to using that library, then you need to, of course, have it integrate with the front-end framework you're using. But other than that, Amplify will just run any NPM script. So if you just have a build stage in NPM, your package JSON for your app, it doesn't really matter what kind of framework it is, as long as you end up with an HTML page with where it loads to JavaScript, then it's fine. You can do that with any framework. So to integrate it in the build tooling, there's no real requirement.
And the follow-up question from him was, why did you choose React as a front-end framework?
Yeah, good question. We mostly do React, so that's where we were most experienced in. And for us, it wasn't really smart if we only have 3 months to start learning something new, especially at this scale. But also, I think that React, the community around React is really big, which can be helpful to the postcode lottery. As soon as we have to transfer this to an internal team or someone that's not been hired yet, they might be able to find people that actually know how to develop React. But also, if you go on Stack Overflow, your answer is probably already there because someone else ran into the same issue. I think that's often important when you consider a certain technology, because you can choose all the real cool, shiny new tools. But then if there's no community and nobody's asking any questions about it, and you have to figure out everything yourself, you're not going to be able to do that within 3 months. So then it was for us the smartest choice to use React, and it integrated really well with everything we did. So we were happy with the choice in the end.
Okay, great. I hope he's happy with the answer.
I hope so too. And otherwise, yeah, you can always contact me afterwards, and we can have a chat.
Yeah. So if there are no further questions, I would suggest we have a nice beer. You can check our fridge for an IPA, a really fruity one. So yeah, let's have a break and see you back in 15 minutes, I believe. So cheers.
Thank you.
So welcome back, everybody. We're going to have our second talk now. Joop is going to talk about how he implemented the agile working method with his team, what you should watch out for. So give a warm applause for Joop.
Thank you. Yeah, so I want to talk about your agile is broken and here's how to fix it. Now, this is, of course, just the clickbait. So everybody is coming here and telling me that the agile is not broken. So this talk is really about our agile was broken and here's how we fixed it. Well, technically, that's not correct. I'm sorry, I'm lying. This talk is really about our agile is broken and here's how we are fixing it. So that's what no, I don't want to talk about this either. So the real deal here is, I'm really sorry, but our agile is broken and here is how we're trying to fix it. So that's what this talk is all about. And that really is agile. So thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the drinks. See you later. No, just a funny little joke. So yeah, I'm Joop. I'm a software developer / kind of half product owner kind of type. Recently, I get asked a lot, do you want to become a product owner? And my answer is no, I don't want to become a product owner. I don't want to spend my time dealing with planning that is more than 6 months ahead. I want to spend my time dealing with planning that is 2 weeks ahead. And that's what I do. I spend my time with planning that is 2 weeks ahead. And I will take you along with it in a journey that I had recently with my team. We are still approaching on this. And why Agile might be the best thing to do and why Agile might not be working for many of the developers I talk to. Any questions, you can ask me on Twitter or later or anything. So let's go into it. Who here does Scrum? All right. Who here does more than just Scrum meetings? Because this is what my team is doing. They're not doing Scrum. They do Scrum meetings. And there's a difference. So the only thing they do is they start Monday with their planning meeting. And that takes 2 hours. And then every day they have a daily stand-up or daily Scrum or whatever you call it. And then everybody is talking about, I don't know what, but it takes half an hour. And I'm like, why? Why do you want to know what I did yesterday? You should have known what I did yesterday. You were there. Don't need to talk about what I did yesterday. I'm sorry, this is the first time I'm doing this talk and I'm going all the way to places. So I will go back to those Scrum meetings in a while, but you get the gist, right? I mean, we have these meetings and we are like developers. We want to develop stuff. We want to build stuff. We want to create stuff. So I don't want to be bothered with all those Scrum meetings. But I have good news for you. Scrum is not those meetings. So please hang around and we will dive into a little bit more how you can make those more like planning sessions or whatever more energized for your work and why they might become handy as a developer. But before we dive into those Scrum meetings, I would like to talk a little bit more about Agile. I think we all heard of this magical word, Agile, right? Who hates Agile? You can show raise of hands, like I don't like it, just tell me. Really, nobody hates Agile? I'm not buying it. You're too shy. Another question. Who here works Agile? You're wrong. You cannot work Agile. Because Agile is an adjective. The Dutch translation, bijvoeglijk naamwoord. So it cannot be in front of a verb. So you cannot work Agile. It's not possible. You can be Agile. Yeah. You can be more Agile. You can be more Agile than you were last week. You can be more Agile than another person. You can be more Agile than a monkey. That's the whole misconception with Agile. We think we work Agile. No, you cannot. It's not a done deal. Like, it's not so, check, work Agile. It's an ongoing process. So what really is Agile? Well, there are a lot of definitions on the internet, and I think the one that suits us best is this one. So Agile, for me as a developer, it means able to think and understand quickly. We just had the talk of, I think Leon was it, right? He was showing the way that his team was able to think and understand quickly. They had a lot of new technologies that their client wanted to implement, and they had like the time of 3 months, I believe it was. So they had to be able to think and understand quickly what they were dealing with. Why they chose React? We know that one. We don't have to think about it. That's the easy bit. And I will come back to the easy bit later on. But this is what Agile really means, to think and understand quickly. And I make the word quickly really tiny, because we focus on quickly. Who here has velocity points? Or any other kind of estimation thing? Who here gets happy when their latest velocity is higher than the previous sprint? And gets the feeling like, hey, I did a good job. KPIs even worse, better-ish, yeah. I will go back to that, but the first thing I did was ditch those. So please, when you go to the office tomorrow, ditch it. Because it has nothing. There is no meaning about velocity. There is no meaning about KPIs. As long as you're not working on thinking and understanding it, then everything you do, may I say it, is a waste of time. So those Scrum meetings, I already mentioned it a little bit. These are the ones, right? We all do this. Do you miss anything on here? Do you see anything weird? So we have start of sprint, our daily Scrum, our review, our retro, and our backlog refinement, right? Wrong. There is no backlog refinement. If you look at it in the Scrum guide, so raise of hands, who hates the backlog refinement session? Well, good news for you, there is none, so you can ditch it tomorrow. Hey, I've seen this guy talk yesterday. He told me there is no backlog refinement. Why are we doing this? I will go back to that one. But there is no backlog refinement. Why do we have these meetings? Why do we have this, or why did they think about this framework to incorporate a way to become more and more agile with a team? It's all about the iteration there is there. So all these meetings or events there are in Scrum, they should be helping you to, and I'm going back to Agile, think and understand quickly. So my team did the backlog refinement. And the first time I did that, I was amazed. It took us 2 hours. And we had this backlog. And after the 2 hours, we had talked about one issue. And I was like, what the? Why are we doing this? Why do we need to talk about one issue for 2 hours and then 10 more? What are we going to do? Spend 20 hours in here? Well, my day is almost over. I'm not going to do that. No, we're going to ditch them. Okay, then what? Yeah, well, we will figure it out later. Okay, interesting. But why did we spend 2 hours? And why, I mean, who recognized this thing about spending a lot of time about one issue and have a list there, and management is liking, why are you not doing anything? And we need to figure out about requirements, right? That's then the word. We need to figure out what we need to do. Well, that's correct. We need to figure out what we need to do, but not doing a backlog refinement, in my opinion. I will show you later on what you can do to improve this. So what went wrong there? We were in a team, 5 developers, a tester, a product owner, and everyone you have there. And the thing is that we did it because we thought, well, on Monday, we're going to work on this, and everybody in the team should pick it up individually, type the code, send it to review, send it to the test, deploy, and be done. So everybody needs to be on the same level the moment we are done with that issue during the backlog refinement, because that was the only moment in time we were together as a team working on that one issue. And after the 2 hours, we were done and we go to the next one. And we stopped there, and then it was, and the rest was like, yeah, we will discover it on Monday, I believe. So I was a little bit more experienced with Scrum, a little bit more experienced with Agile. So the next time I was like, we're not going to do this again. At least I'm not. So with you guys, fine. I'm not going to spend 2 hours of my expensive development time sitting in a meeting talking about issues. I have other methods for that, which I will come back to later. I want to talk about Cynefin. Who here has heard of Cynefin? And I don't expect anybody, and that's not an offense. No, it's not. Might be. It might be. I'm a little bit of an evangelist about Cynefin, so it might be, but it's not a new religion. You don't have to do weird stuff and or anything. No. What is it that we do as developers, and as developers in the broad sense, like even testers and product owners and I don't know, everybody within the company? What is it that we do? Yeah. Solve problems. Thank you. First one, correct. Give that man a beer or whatever you want. Yeah, we solve problems with software. Or do we? What is it what we really do? That's correct. Most of the time we fail. Well, at least I do. In my opinion, what we need to do as developers, and this is the hard part of our job, we have to make decisions to solve problems with software. And this decision-making part is most of the time forgotten. But we do it on a daily basis. If you are typing in your editor and you're like, am I going to do a for loop, a do loop, or a while loop? Or should I do an if statement or a switch case or anything? It's decision-making, and that's on micro level. And that's most of muscle memory. When you build experience, you know, kind of like a gut feeling, like, it's just an if. I should do here or wow or whatever, but it is decision-making. But it's on higher level as well. Why does it take the backlog refinement session 2 hours for one issue? You try to stuff all the decision-making you need to do in your sprint in the backlog refinement. And that's where all goes wrong. That's why the session takes so long, because our minds work in different ways. Give me a keyboard and I will build it. But probably that's not how all of you work. Some of you will start drawing inside a book, or need to sleep about it, or work with Post-its, or I don't know how you do this decision making, but it works differently. And that's what we need to enable us to within your team. So we have to make these decisions. Now I'm going back to Cynefin, because Cynefin is a decision-making framework. Now that's convenient. So what it really is about is, like, we have 4 domains in where we are whenever we need to make a decision. Whenever we need to make a decision. So this afternoon I was driving in, I was completely forgotten how horrible traffic is pre-corona. So I went from traffic jam to traffic jam to traffic jam to traffic jam. And every time I hit a traffic jam, I was like, okay, I need to make a decision. Go I in line, or maybe I take a detour. And every time when you have to make a decision, you can think about, in which domain am I? And it might surprise you in which domain we are. So I'm going to explain them. And after that, I'm going to ask you about, which domain do you think we as software developers are most of the time with solving the problems we face? So let's dive into the first one. And this is the clear domain. So we have 4. This is the first one. It's clear domain. We have no knowns. There are best practices. And the approach here is to sense, to categorize, and respond. So This is when you, most of the time, like typing code. I hit a problem, switch or if. I can do this, I can do that. Let's go with a Swiss. That sense, categorize, respond. You take a look at the problem, you put it in one of the boxes that you have, and you go to action. Most of the time, factory work. And I don't mean factory in the sense of the object factory, but just the plain old factory plant factory. We're not there. I can give you that already. We are not there. The problem is when you do the backward refinement, you're stuffing all your decision making in this process, because your backward refinement session is all about sensing and categorize and responding later. So that's where it's go wrong, in my opinion. The second one is chaotic. Any action is okay. I step off this podium here, I twist my ankle, and we are not sure if it's broken or not. Take me to the hospital. That's chaotic. It doesn't matter whether or not it's broken. You don't need to assess it. I'm in pain. I need meds. Take me to the nearest hospital, and they can assess there what's going on. That's chaotic. Are we there? Sometimes. When shit hits the fan. What do? We try to solve it. So the thing here is, one of the things that makes you know that you're in chaotic is that it's novel, it's new. Leon was maybe a little bit in the chaotic with the whole AWS kind of situation that he was dealing with in the beginning. Might be, I'm not sure, could be. You don't want to be here. If you are here, you want to get out of here as soon as possible. How? Act, sense, respond. So first do something, then look at what's happening inside the situation you're in, and then take another positive action. Which might still be you're in chaotic, so you act again. But first you do something, and then you see how it goes. You can pick me up, go to the elevator, and I'm like, oh no, it's fine. Okay, then we're in a different domain, and you can, whatever, take any action that you want. These two so far clear. You can already see that these are the complete opposites of each other. All right. Then we have complicated. And here we have known unknowns. At least it's clear what we don't know. We have good practice here. We might do this, we might do that. We are here sometimes. Experienced developers are sometimes here. They go like, yeah, well, it depends. And it depends because of the unknowns, how they fall out when you get to know them. This is one is building up with experience. And here it's once again, you sense and then you analyze and then you respond. So we had the clear one, sense, categorize, respond. This one is almost the same, but I sense and then I analyze. I might try something. Maybe an if. I get another one. Or maybe a switch. This feels better. Yeah, let's go with this one. Who recognized this when they are developing? Yeah. So you're in a complicated, like, hey, I have this decision. Yeah, this feels good. Let's go with that one. So sense, analyze, respond. And then we have the last one, and that's complex. And we have unknown unknowns. I hate those. I cannot see them. I don't know where they are. I have no clue what they do, and I have no clue what they impact me. So once again, the estimation stuff, this is why they fail. You had a backlog refinement, and you have this issue with all the unknown unknowns, and you expect your developers, including yourself maybe, to figure out all the unknown unknowns within that session, figure out what it takes to fix those unknown unknowns, and put an estimation on it. And of course, that estimation is in points and not in time. But we all know that somewhere someone has a sheet like, 5 points, that's 3 hours. So eventually it becomes time, right? And we all think it's only going to be like 5 hours, so I'm going to say 8. That's what we do. Yeah. This one is, you know that you are in this one because it will evolve in front of you. It's emergent. You will do something and you get to know more, get more information. And you do another thing and you get more information. And you try another thing and you do more information. So You see it here, we probe. We try, we lay back a little bit, sense, and then respond. Maybe probe again, or maybe we come into the unknown, known unknowns territory, and we can figure out, okay, that's the direction we're going to go. I give it maybe a little bit away, but in which kind of these 4 domains do you think we are as developers? I wish. Sometimes, yeah, hopefully at the end of your sprint. It's this one, it's complex. We are this is the whole diagram. Most of the time, we are in a complex situation. We need to think about complex problems with all the unknowns that are there. And somehow people expect from us that we know all this. No, we don't. We have no clue. Literally, we have no clue. That's why we have Scrum. That's why we have Lean and Agile and everything that is there. And this is the reason why we need to do that. And like I said, most of us are just here. We think we are in the obvious. It's your job, right? You know what you do. You're a developer. You've learned from this. No, I've learned how to deal with things that I don't know. I've not learned to deal with this exactly thing because it's the first time that I'm doing it. More a little bit like, I don't know it in English, but Pippi Langkous, like, I've never done it, so I think I can do it. That's my motto a little bit, like, yeah, sure. I know I can solve these things. Within 2 weeks, I don't know. Maybe. Depends on everything that I will see. Maybe in 2 days, I can tell you more. I didn't go into this order. If you are there, run away. Really, you don't want to be here. And this is also a funny bit because of the obvious and the chaos. When you are in obvious and you think, hey, this is really going well. Watch out, because this is a cliff. And you can fall down into chaos real fast the moment you are in obvious. So always be aware. This is evolving over time. So within a day, you can go in 3 or 4 kinds of these domains with your decision making. This is what our jobs make so hard. This is why context switching is so hard. So maybe it's a little bit like a religion. Any questions about Cynefin? I mean, this is just something that I just dump here now in 10 minutes. There's a lot more to talk about. For me, as an agile developer, this is my go-to chart. I am every day thinking about what kind of decision do I need to make? In what kind of domain am I? So it's all about the journey and not the result. And that's what Agile is all about. It's about the journey. It's about this being able to think and understand fast. And Cynefin can help you with that. Because if you know in what kind of decision-making domain you are, you can think about the approach you're going to do. If you are in complex, just type something, see where it goes. It doesn't matter whether or not it will give the result, but you learn more about the problem you need to solve and what the kind of decisions you need to make. Maybe you need to change your tech stack. You want to know that ASAP and not 3 months in, because then you have a problem. So a little bit practical, because I was promising and how to fix it. So a little bit of stuff that at least I did with a couple of my teams that I was in over time. Some of them more successful than others. I don't say you need to do this, but this is your maybe a little bit how you can start thinking about this Cynefin and implementing it better, and at least get rid of the backlog session. I mean, so tomorrow you can go, hey, let's stop with the backlog session and start trying to do this. Because there is this Cynefin thing and it's really weird, but I think we need to do this. All right, so the first one, start doing a review. Who is doing a review here? On a frequently basis. Start doing it. And not the demo. Not just the demo, not like, yeah, this is what we built. No, talk about the things you've learned. Talk about what kind of decision you need to make and how to proceed in the future on your problem. So the demo part is nice. It should take about 15 minutes. And then you will talk about, and now what? Because this is what we have learned about your tech stack, about the client, about the domain, about whatever. Because maybe something is easier now that you know more stuff. So really start doing a review. It's the best thing. It's quite easy. It's a Scrum meeting. So you can start it quite easily when you're doing Scrum. Do it on a regular basis. Invite stakeholders and make sure, or try to make sure that they feel engaged. So try to figure out, use your product owner to try to figure out what they want out of this meeting. So the second one, gather feedback as much as you can. So from customers, and don't fall into the trap that your product owner or anyone in your company is saying, yeah, we don't have to talk about the customers because we know exactly what they want. No, you don't. You don't. I don't. I know I don't. So talk to them. Try to be as close to them as possible. Gather around a little group of people that are paying a lot of money, and you say, hey, well, maybe you want to be on some kind of thinking committee with us or something. Colleagues, and not just developers, but the marketing and everybody that is involved in your product. Help them. And yes, even your mom or your dad or anyone who is not within your company. You can show it to them. You can tell them what you're doing. And maybe they will give you some pointers like, have you thought about this? But gathering feedback, it's the one way to be able to know if we're going into the right direction. So it's really important. Ask about the problem and don't assume that the proposed solution is the correct one. We need to make the decisions. We as developers are in there, in the war zone, maybe a wrong word in these days, but we are there behind our keyboard and we need to make decisions. And we can only do that when we know about the problem. How can we scope whatever we are going to do within our sprint if we can think about the way we're going to implement a solution to fixing a problem? We can play around with that. We can play around like, hey, okay, this is getting way more complicated than I was thinking, but I can do this rather easily. And that might help 80% of our clients. And the 20%, well, they have to wait. And at least we learn if the 80% is helped or not. And if they are not, then you know also that you're not going to help the other 20%. So ask about the problem. Ask why, and why again, and why again, and why again. One of the first things I did in my team was asking email marketing, like, hey, we're talking, there was my second backlog refinement, and I was like, this is going to take 2 hours again. So I was asking her like, hey, can you show me what you're doing? Can you please share your screen? Show me the email program you're using and show me what you're doing and why, what you want and why you cannot do that. And the next sentence I heard was like, it blew me away. It was the product owner who said, well, that's a pretty good idea. And I was like, that's your job. So ask about the problem. And if no one in your team is doing it, do it yourself. And yes, we are developers and we want to write code. But please try someone in your team who is comfortable with just nagging around like, but I want to understand what's going on and I want to understand how I can help you with building software. This one is quite easy, right? So no more estimates. But why no more estimates? The thing with estimate is that it takes too much time. You're trying to deal with your decision-making process in the obvious domain. And that's not going to work. So whatever you do and how much time, it doesn't matter how much time you spend on talking about it, you will never get the estimation right. You might get lucky, but you never get it right. There is another problem here, and that is you're going to focus on output. Because the moment I say it's 3 points, and I know in my back of my head that 3 points is 5 hours, So roughly a working day with every other meeting surrounded. Then I'm going to focus to deliver the thing in 5 hours on one day. I'm not focusing anymore whether or not I'm making the right decisions. I'm not focusing on outcome anymore. I'm not helping the client. I'm just making sure I'm getting my task done in the time I said I could do it. And that's stressful. Mostly when you are in the unknown unknowns and you are like in your computer and you're like, oh, it's like this. I did not know that. Yeah, this is going to take me 5 days. And you try to do it in 5 hours. You build legacy on legacy, and eventually it works, and it goes to the tester, and it comes back. And I mean, right? We know all this. So no more estimates. But now I hear you ask, but how? How are we going to do it then if we don't do any estimates anymore? And we skip our backlog refinement in a way. So this one is the best one. Who here does pair programming? Who here does mob programming? Who knows what mob? Okay. Does anyone? So do we all know what mob programming is? I doubt it. So we know what pair programming is: 2 developers, 1 computer. Mob programming is 2 developers plus n at 1 computer. So it's pretty much the same. But don't do it with a senior and a junior, like, hey, I'm going to help the junior get along, and that's why we're going to do pair programming. No, do it because you have to make decisions. So make the decisions together behind a laptop. If needed, involve your stakeholders. They don't understand code, that's correct. They understand the problem. And they can see and talk with you and your team while you are working on solving that problem. And the moment you hit a bump, like, hey, I need to solve this, but if I'm going to do this, it might take me 5 days, then the stakeholder might say, oh, but can you do this? Now that I see this, can you do this? Oh, yeah, that's quite easy. Well, then I'm for 80% done. Let's skip the next 20. So there, try to do pair programming and mob programming, but especially on the decision-making stuff. Once again, we have all these unknown unknowns. That is where we are. So use the collaborative brain of a team to fix those problems together. Not in a 2-hour session, but use your complete sprint. 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever it is. Sprint to solve those problems. Use your backlog refinement just to plan a little bit ahead. Use sprint planning to figure a little bit out, like, hey, what are we going to do? When are we going to work on what? And then dive straight into it. Do modeling sessions if you want to. If someone needs to draw it on a piece of paper, use a whiteboard, but do it together, collaboratively. That's not writing code. I hear you think that's correct, but that's not our job. Writing code, for me personally, is just some painful thing I need to do in my day-to-day job. I don't like it. I have an editor. I can do Alt-Enter, and just it writes the code for me. My job is to think, and to think with people. And this is the last one. Focus on value. That's so important. What is the smallest change I can deploy today? So write it, test it, deploy it today, all in one day, to make sure that we are going in the right direction. So don't do things that take multiple days. Always think about, and I know it's not always possible, but always try to think about what's the smallest thing I can do today to learn. And it might be that the customer doesn't know it. That's okay. But what can I do to learn, to make sure that we're going into the right direction? Because direction is much more important than speed. And many of us are going nowhere fast. Thank you. Any questions? The one all the way in the back. There's a microphone coming your way.
So I was wondering, do you have any experience running this in a remote environment? So we start to work now more and more remotely.
Yes.
And a lot of the things you're talking about rely upon these little bumps of interactions between people.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of like forcefully schedule those bumps?
What we eventually did in my last team, and that was just during the Corona pandemic, we had a open office in Zoom, just a Zoom call that was always there and people can join. And we used that for mob programming sessions. Those are really intense. Mob programming by itself is intense. Doing it over Zoom is really intense. So make sure that you keep your energy levels, keep an eye on those. But that works pretty well. I'm not sure if people work with PHP and PHP Storm, but I know that you can install a plugin. It's a paid one, but you can work with multiple people in the same editor. So yeah, well, with the Corona pandemic, this whole remote thing really got a boost. So that's what we use mostly, like just an open Zoom call. Everybody is in there. When mob programming or pair programming, you have one driver. So she or he tells you what she or he is doing. And whenever there is something, you can zoom out. You can create breakout rooms if you just want to be, two people want to discuss something, and then the rest of the team wants to go on. So yeah, try to mimic your office in a digital way, which is quite hard, but just a open Zoom call that is always there, it works fine. We also use it for our meetings. We also use it for meetings for people that are not within our team. We were always like, hey, here in the channel, in the description of our Slack channel, there you can find the Zoom link. Most of the time we are there during working hours, at least one. If you have a question, just drop in. Like a door in your normal office. I hope this answers your question.
Yeah. One follow-up one. It does not really have anything
Yeah.
related to do with this, but do you have a camera on or camera off policy, or you don't really care?
My personal opinion is I cannot really stand talking to someone that I don't see. So for me, camera off is like, hey, this is weird. We didn't have any policy on that, but the whole team was like, no, it's better to have the camera on. At least if you are participating. It could be that you need to go to the toilet, then the camera goes off. But normally the camera was on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I think we all are believing now in Knif. And
Yes.
we're believers.
Cool.
So thank you very much for the talk. I would like to thank Joop and Leon as well. We have a small present for you guys. So there are some beers in here.
Ah.
And we have a little small thing here as well. Which hands in a Scrum deck from DEA now.
Ah.
So I don't know if you use it with Kniffen, the Scrum deck, but
It could be.
it could be as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the end, we have for every attendee a Scrum deck as well. So thank you very much for your time. I would share tomorrow in our Slack community. We have a Slack community. I will share a feedback code or link. So it will be much appreciated if you all fill that one out, so we can improve our meetups for the next time. Furthermore, our next meetup is on the 16th of June. We have two speakers from Belgium. One is going to talk about Laravel. His name is Freek van der Herten. And the other one is Frederik van Brabant, who is going to talk about I became a team lead, what now? So he gives his experiences, what you can encounter as a team lead. So I hope you all to see you on the 16th of June. And have a nice day and a nice evening.
Ja, toch?
Leuk man.